Thank you so much, and welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening to discuss this topic. I always love it when there's a round of applause at the beginning because you never know what you're going to get at the end. But it's already tomorrow where I am, but unfortunately I can't give you tonight's racing or lotto results. It doesn't quite work that way. If it did, I wouldn't be sitting here. My background, as you just heard, is in both IT and strategy. And what I want to talk to you about this evening is how to become the strategic CIO. How to be seen to be enabling your organization's strategy execution. There are two ways to implement strategy. One is through business as usual, and the other is through projects, and that's the area that I'm going to focus on this evening. And that's where you can have the greatest influence in your organization in terms of actually achieving the strategy that you set out to achieve. Now I just want to start with where I'm coming from, in this case literally, because some years ago I was involved in a professional organization that was headquartered in Pennsylvania, and we were not getting much service out of that organization, and we wrote and said, we're not getting much service, what are you going to do about it? And they wrote back and said, we can't understand why you're not getting much service because we just opened an office in London, and that's quite near to Austria. So if anyone is in doubt as to where I'm coming from, I'm coming from Australia, which, as you can see, is their top centre. And I'm actually coming from the top of that diagram. And there's America on the bottom left-hand corner and Europe on the bottom right. As you can see, this is what is called an upside-down map of the world. There are some people who believe that normal maps are the upside-down map of the world, but what this is really something you've seen many times before, the map of the world, but from a different perspective. And that's the key message and why I've presented this, not to really show you where Australia is. But the key to becoming a strategic IT leader is to change your perspective, to actually move out of the IT view of the world and take a business strategy perspective. That's what you need, and you also need the business, your business partners, to change their perspective as well. As you heard in the introduction, strategy execution has been a consistent and persistent problem. So here are three statements. Fewer than 30% of strategies and projects are successfully delivered. The amount wasted on projects is over 100 billion, and project results have not improved in the last 2 decades. Now, I was at a conference recently where one of the presenters was questioning these sorts of statistics. So I thought I'd better just say that I have actually verified each of these. When I was head of strategy for a bank, at the end of each year, I would then go back to identify what strategies had actually been successfully delivered. And it was never above 25%. And normally over 50% of the strategies hadn't even got off the drawing board. And as I say, that strategy without execution is a dream, and strategy with poor execution is a nightmare. So I think you need to understand these are real figures that a lot of organizations are not measuring, and that's why they're allowed to persist. The 100 billion, well, that was from an article that went out to verify, what is the actual true cost of IT failures across organizations. And in one particular bank I was working at, I actually calculated that they were losing or wasting $1 million a day. which is about $250 million a year, just by the way they were going about their projects and trying to implement their strategy. And the normal statistic, which again I've verified on a number of occasions, is that about 15% of all investments fail completely. So that's about $150,000 in each $1 million spent. And what's really worrying is the last point. Project results have not improved in the past 2 decades. Back in 1991, A.D. Little did a survey of project success rates, which, if you change the name of the people, could have been the Standish reports of about 2011 or 12 or 13. The figures were essentially the same. And yet, during this time, we have all spent a fortune on project managers, project management training, project management tools, and a whole range of other things that are just not having the impact. Similarly, when I was at Boston Consulting Group, we were looking at the actual success rate in terms of strategy and value delivery, and that was about 3 to 5%, and that's the figure that still applies today. And project performance is also poor. 50% of IT projects are over budget or late, or fail to deliver their intended value. And I think the important thing is over time, over cost, diminishes the business value of projects, and that's why they're important. We don't do projects just to see if this time we could deliver something on time, on budget. We do projects to make sure that we can actually get the value. And every dollar we spend that's more than we need to diminishes that value. Every week that we deliver later than we need to diminishes the value by eliminating that week's worth of benefits. But even worse is where projects fail to deliver what they were supposed to deliver. I recently spent 6 months up in Darwin in Australia trying to rescue a project that had started off at 13 million and was eventually implemented for 58 million. And we were asked 2 months after implementation to work out what the benefits were, which was a bit late in the life cycle of a project. And we identified that if the project had delivered what it set out to deliver, the value would have been $50 million. But the way it had been delivered, and this project had had all the fingers of the usual suspects over it, IBM, KPMG, PwC, EY, they'd all been involved at some stage or another. Instead of 50 million, the actual available value was now 10. They'd managed to destroy $40 million of the benefits by the way the project had been delivered. So when we're trying to implement strategy through projects, we need to improve our game. We can't, implementing a strategy badly is more of a nightmare than a solution. And the final statistic is 17% of IT projects are so bad they threaten the existence of the company. I think we've all seen major projects, either in our organisation or other organisations, that have just escalated out of control. They've just become never-ending holes into which funds and resources are poured. In too many organisations, once a project is approved, it is condemned to completion, so that no one will ever stop it. And that's where a lot of this happens. So we have an execution problem. It's still an execution problem after 20 years. And what I want to point out tonight is it's unnecessary. That is the key point. a quick diversion into explain how I got into this space, because it does explain where I am today. It all started with a phone call when I was head of strategy for the bank, and I got a phone call from the CEO secretary, and she said, "Bill wants to see you now, and he's livid." Now, I'm sure all of you would accept that getting a phone call from the CEO and learning that he's livid is not a call any of us actually want. So as I went down to his office, I'm obviously thinking, what have I done? What haven't I done? What have I caused this livid? And he then gave me a 30-minute tirade about lack of IT performance on the one hand and project performance on the other. And at the end I said, "Well, yes, Bill, I totally agree, but IT doesn't report to me." And he said, "It does now." And at that point I became accountable for all projects in the bank. I already had the strategic projects, mergers and acquisitions and projects like that. I had operational improvement, I had organizational design, I had methods, and now I had IT. And throughout the bank, we had problems with projects. So I thought, well, this is not a problem just in our bank, it's not a problem in banking, it's a worldwide problem. And at that time, MIT issued a research of 415 CEOs across the world and asked them how many of them thought they were getting true value out of IT. And at that time, all 415 said they weren't. So we had a problem. We got some of the brightest people in the world working on projects, and yet we're getting poor results. So my conclusion was, if it's such a universal problem, we must be using the wrong paradigm. That the primary perspective for projects is wrong. And that's where I started. So when I actually started in projects, which was before that time, about 15, 20 years earlier, there was no such thing as an IT or project profession. The business ran it all. But what I inherited was a situation where we had project and program management and control, technical control. We were beginning to have methodologies, PMBOK, Prince2, MSP, now we've got Agile. We've got all these aspects to delivering projects, but lots of support, but the results are the same. So my key insight when I looked at this and said, well, something must be wrong. Something must be missing if we're not getting the results we really want. So that's when I identified, firstly, one lens or perspective missing was the business value delivery and governance lens. We needed to get the business involved, informed, leading, taking accountability. What's happened is that as the IT and project professionals have grown, they have been taken control of projects, and the business has either felt left out or has seen that it does not need to be involved because all the experts are handling it. So that they don't need to be there taking accountability for what needs to be done. They can just sit back and complain. But what we found was it's really vital that the business actually gets involved. In the research we did at Boston Consulting Group, which was on where the value goes on projects, we were finding two, say, manufacturing companies, and they were both putting in the same hardware and software, but getting totally different results. And the main difference was how far the business was involved, how far the business knew how to drive and get the results they wanted. Where they sat back, they got poor results. Where they were heavily involved, they got excellent results. So one key perspective for both yourselves and for your business is the business needs to be actively involved. They need to know what to do, when, why, and how. The idea of a trained, educated sponsor should not be an oxymoron, but the business people in a governance role actually know what they're doing. But more than this, there is also the strategic investment and portfolio management role, getting the executive team and board to know what their roles were in implementing strategy. To some extent, they come up with a strategy, they really don't know quite how to implement it. And if all they do is develop a project, you can see that they leap over the blue lens, and therefore there's a gap in the execution. So the board and executive team should be driving strategy and not hoping for it, which is what happens too often. Now you'll notice that portfolio management is in this lens with strategy and investment, and that's because it really is a strategic role. Unfortunately, a number of the methodologies around portfolio management, P3, M3, R2, D2 or whatever they are, tend to come at portfolio management from a project and program point of view. So the mindset that is being developed is from a project point of view rather than a strategy execution point of view. And that's the wrong mindset and the wrong perspective. Portfolio management is a subset of strategy execution, not a superset of project execution, which is why it sits here, and the people who run it should be strategically aligned. So when you have all four lenses or perspectives involved, then you can see how the whole process works. Strategy drives the process. Gives executives give direction, the business gives requirements, the projects execute the tasks and deliver outcomes, value, and the business results. But why doesn't it work? Why are we getting such poor results from strategy? Is that the strategy and business value lenses are missing in many organizations. And when they're missing, who has to pick up the pieces? Be yourselves often, trying to make things work, get some delivery happening when the business and executive team are not performing all their roles. So we need two sets of skills or capabilities. The project management delivery, which we know well, and we have plenty of resources and skills and training involved there. And then there's the strategy execution and value delivery capabilities that we need in the organization to get the results. And as you can see, they abbreviate very neatly to the word TOP. So to successfully execute strategy, you have to add two or more dimensions to basic project management. Otherwise, the failure rate we saw at the beginning will continue. So how does this relate to you in your role as an IT leader? To explain this, we're going to use the IT value pyramid. We defined this in 1996 to help explain to businesses and CIOs what is the value-adding roles of a CIO or IT leader. And it explains the potential disconnects between IT and the business. I'm sure many of you have seen articles over the years which ask you to suggest marketing IT to the business. My reaction to that has always been I'm happy to support that after finance, HR and marketing have done it. Because you shouldn't need to market IT, you have to demonstrate the value in terms of what you're actually doing. And what we've got here in red type are the basic, what I call IT manager roles. Keeping the lights on, providing the services, doing applications, development, and improving the efficiency by which you do both provide the services and applications development. Now all of you there will know the amount of effort required to actually make this all work seamlessly. because there's new technologies, there's BYOD, there's viruses, there's patch updates, there's a whole range of things happening at all the time that is threatening to make this unstable. And the key thing is to keep it going, and that takes a lot of work, a lot of energy, and these are absolutely key roles, but from a business point of view, the value is low to none. In fact, this is actually a bit generous, because the none should say none to negative, because the day the network goes down for 4 hours, you get negative feedback, you don't just get none. And many people, particularly when I've presented this at CIO conferences, get very upset and say, but this is so important. We are vital to the business's operation, and we should be recognized for that value that we're adding in terms of providing IT products and services. My analogy is to say, well, each fortnight or month, whatever the period is, you get paid. And you don't rush around to the CFO and congratulate them on the fact that they've managed the cash flows so well that they've actually allowed the payroll to get run. But the day they don't manage the cash flow and you don't get paid, you're going to be round there very quickly. And that's the same with IT. In terms of all the normal IT operations and services, there is no value. That's your job. And it's only negative when things don't work. But things can get better. So here we have the basic IT project and delivery management, and then we start looking at the other roles that you can play and the value there. IT performance improvement here means when you're actually improving the service to the business. IT efficiency improvement is internal IT operational improvement. But where you're being seen to improve the desktop environment or the speed to market in terms of getting things processed or speed of doing application development, well, there's a moderate level of value attached to that from the business. But where the real value is when you are visibly seen to be improving business performance, helping the organization reduce costs, increase its capabilities, improve productivity. That's when the value by the business is high. And when you can extend that into market performance improvement, that's when the value gets very high, when you're actually getting products to market, helping them succeed in the market through websites or whatever the mechanisms are. So there are opportunities to be rated highly and be seen to be adding a great value to the organization. And that's when you take on the strategy, execution, and value delivery roles. Now, many of you will have noticed that this pyramid has two dimensions. The left-hand side is very much IT service delivery focused, and these are the areas you can control by yourself and make effective and operational. The right-hand side is very business strategy results focused, and that's where you need to involve the business to get the results you need and to get the outcomes that the business actually wants. When you do pick up this role, you can become a hero in your organization in terms of helping them actually achieve what they really want to achieve. Because although they claim it, they often need help to define exactly what they're trying to achieve. So let's go back to the four lenses model, as we call it. So it starts with strategy. Strategy should be the starting point for what we're doing, but we need projects to actually make the strategy work and translate it into business results. So the key thing here is that success is the delivery of value and business results. Success is not delivering on time, on budget per se. That is good, provided it's the minimum cost and minimum time. I've recently completed a series of articles on what is success, because too often success is seen as completion. If you just get the project finished, then that's success. Whereas it's not. It's success is when you've actually delivered the value and achieved the business results. So we still need project delivery management, but we also need strategy execution and value delivery perspectives and tools and techniques to actually make it happen. You cannot achieve this just by improving project and program control. So you need all four lenses to exist and be operated by the people most appropriate. So you want the executives and boards performing their role in the strategy, investment and portfolio management, and then the business management teams and staff performing their value delivery role and governance. So the key is to recognize where the value is. This is why you're doing projects, to achieve the business results and value. Now, one of the frightening things that's happened in recent years is that the on-time, on-budget measure of success has become all-pervasive. A couple of years ago, we did a survey across Asia of CEOs, CIOs, CFOs, project managers and chairmen of companies. And when we asked them what was the measure of project success, all but the chairman said on time, on budget. When in fact the business should be saying that they actually got the results and the value. The chairman said improved business performance. That's what it's all about. That's the mindset, the perspective that we need to bring if we're going to succeed. So you need a different perspective, a different mindset, different measures of success from the traditional on time, on budget project view of life. It requires you to shift the focus from down here, where the project and technical control, where at the moment the business sees this is where the focus needs to be to execute strategy. You need to move that up here to the business and strategic levels for them to actually deliver the value and the results. But how? That's all very nice, but how do you do it? And that's when we come in. I talked about the paradigm at the beginning, and what we identified is we need to equip the business, the executives and the board to know what to do, when, why and how. We have a whole series of self-evident truths within TOP, and two are that projects are commissioned to deliver business benefits. Projects are delivered to deliver business benefits. That's the key. That's why we do projects. Therefore, if we don't get the benefits, we failed. It doesn't matter if the project was delivered, did we get the benefits should be the primary measure. And projects need to be business directed, led and governed. The business needs to come back into the equation to become the driver of results rather than just the recipient. So the execution problem that we talked about at the beginning is a business problem. But the business doesn't know what to do. So you're often taking accountability for things that you can't actually deliver. I did see one CIO a few years ago proudly announce he was new to the organization. He said to the rest of the executive team, "I will take personal accountability for delivering all benefits from all projects." All of his colleagues rubbed their hands in glee because that absolved them of any accountability. And he wasn't there 1 year later. That's not the way. We've got to get the business to know what to do and play their part. And there are some basics for the business to understand. Projects are not the same as operations. They're a different mindset and context. You can't apply your operational management skills to projects and expect them to succeed. I saw a CEO try and do this on a project which had 65 issues, and she turned to the project manager and said, I want these down to 10 by the next meeting, which in an operational sense you might be able to do, but in a project sense the real questions are, why have we got 65 open issues? What impact are they having on the project? What is the impact on the project if we divert resources to resolving all these issues? Bringing operational mindsets and skills to projects can kill them. Equally, another thing for business to understand is that most investment management processes are poor. In fact, they do recognize it in many cases. I mean, if I was there, I'd ask you to put your hands up if your organization prioritizes projects through just the executive group having a discussion. Then, whenever we've looked at existing portfolios, we always find at least 15% of projects are strategically irrelevant. In talking to Gartner a year or so ago, they said that their figure was near 80% were strategically irrelevant. But we also find projects set up to fail are being approved. We find that projects who have underpitched their costs to get going and then they'll come back for more money are being approved. Or conversely, those projects that have pitched by asking too much so they don't have to come back for more are being approved. And the cost of a poor investment management process is massive. McKinsey found that it made a difference of about 30% difference in shareholder value over 15 years. Another research by United Decisions found it made a 40% difference to profitability over 15 years. And we've consistently found that it makes at least a 50% difference to the return on investments on projects. So fixing these investment management and portfolio management and other aspects is critical to your organizational success. The business needs to drive and support and deliver, and you can enable this. The business needs to know what to do, why, when and how, which is why we focused on the top two lenses. So what's important here? The business needs to take the lead on value delivery, but you can provide the tools, techniques and processes. And in some ways this is almost back to the future, in that this is what it was like in the 1970s, which unfortunately I'm old enough to remember. And so it was during that time that the business did drive projects. If you were putting in a payroll system, the payroll manager would come out of payroll, run the project, install the system and go back into payroll to use the system on an ongoing basis. That very rarely happens now. We have a whole group of other people doing projects and then they hand it back to the business, and the business then tries to work out how to get some value out of it. So what you can see here is that the project initiation, simplification, business case, change delivery, the business staff and managers should be driving the actual change required to deliver the results. Then above that is benefits delivery. I'm sure many organizations, many of your organizations have a chart of project delivery which has something like define, develop, deliver, and then deliver benefits, with delivering benefits being the last chevron on the diagram. Benefits delivery is constant. It's not something that happens at or after the end. It is the purpose and driver of the project. And indeed you should be able to track everything you're doing on the project back to what benefits that is enabling to be delivered. If you can't do that, then you're not being benefits driven. Project governance. More projects fail due to poor project governance than poor project management. And yet we've spent billions on poor project management and little to nothing on project governance. I mean, how many have you seen a sponsor or steering committee that have actually been trained in their role? I mean, every major IT disaster for the past 30 years has been overseen by a group of executives who are in governance roles who did not know what to do when the project started failing. So we need to help the business understand what the role of project governance is and help them to become effective. We ran a training courses across our government department over a period of about 18 months. We trained all the sponsors, steering committee members and the project managers in what is project governance and how to be effective. And then 1 year later I went back to talk to some of the sponsors to say, well, what did you do with this knowledge that we gave you? Did you just forget it, park it, put it on the shelf or whatever? And the interesting thing was they said it really gave us a clue as to what information to look for, what decisions we could make, that shutting down a project wasn't failure. So they actually felt very empowered in their role, whereas previously they were mainly being recipients. We then talked to the project managers and they said it is so much better now that the business is actually working with us rather than judging us at the steering committee members. So project governance is a key skill that's often neglected, but is critical to actually achieving the results you want from your projects. Portfolio management, as I mentioned earlier, is strategic execution skill set, managing the portfolio to deliver the strategy, knowing exactly how each project contributes to each strategic imperative. You need to know this project is delivering these aspects of the strategy, these dimensions, how much it's contributing, how it's actually doing that. And actually measuring the strategic contribution of projects is amazingly simple to do, but rarely done. And what I'm not talking about here is ticking the box. We have a list of 6 strategies the company is pursuing and we just tick which strategies this project aligns to. That is superficial. We need to know if reducing sales costs is important to our strategy. Is this project helping us reduce our sales costs? If so, how much? Is it just taking $20,000 out of the sales costs or $2 million? We want to know that to be able to assess the strategic relevance and be able to track that our strategy is actually being delivered. We were working for an organization that was having a major transformation. It was moving from a paper-based to a digital environment and had a whole number of projects going. And what they didn't know was how well these projects actually align with their digital strategy. So we introduced our strategic contribution assessment tool and got all the projects to score their strategic contribution. So that was fine, and we found that all of them had some level of strategic contribution, but more importantly, we found that one of the strategies wasn't being delivered by any of the projects. This had just been totally neglected, and no one had realized that this critical strategy wasn't actually being actioned. So then they could take action to make it happen. And investment management is the effective allocation and management and return on capital. Now I'd like you to think of your organization. What do they talk about? Do they talk about capital allocation, capital management, or capital returns? Many organizations talk about capital allocation. They have a capital allocation process where it's basically the mindset behind that is they're doling out money to projects. Whereas the whole point is you're actually issuing capital to get a return. And this is consistently poorly done because basically capital is the last great slush fund for management. I feel it's a test of management quality. How good your prioritization and capital management processes are is a good test of how good your management is. Poor managers want a poor process because they can get away with murder, whereas good managers want to actually maximize the return. And as we've heard a few minutes ago, McKinsey and others have said, if you get this right, it makes a huge impact on your shareholder value and profitability. So getting these skills into your organization is a key opportunity for you to build organizational capability to deliver effectively. Just imagine for a moment what your world would be like if your business colleagues knew what to do, when, why and how, and then did it consistently and effectively. And if they knew how to execute these tools to actually deliver their strategy. So where should you start? What we found is that the best place to start is with the value side of things. The costs are normally well managed. We've been managing costs on projects for years. It's normally the first question people ask, what's it going to cost? The thing that's been neglected is the value side of the equation. So you can take a leaf out of the Boston Consulting Group's approach. When we started moving into IT for the very first time, we thought, we don't want to implement systems, that's not our skill set. How do we actually get into the IT industry? And what we therefore did was focus on the value. Where does the value go on projects was the research I ran worldwide. So what we found was that one of the reasons why the value isn't being delivered is because it's actually not actually being defined. So if you want to make an immediate impact, you can help the organization define what it really wants. What are the true business outcomes the organization wants to achieve as a result of investing in this project? Not what does it want the project to deliver, but where does it want to end up after the end of the project? So if you ask, just to give you a simple example, if you ask two people say, I want to lose weight, one may want to lose weight because they want to get a new job. Another one may want to lose weight in order to improve their health. Now, if you want to improve your health, then you may want to go to a gym and so on to actually help improve your health. Whereas if you want to get a new job, then you maybe want a new wardrobe. But they both started with the same objective, to lose weight. So what you need to do is go through a process to help your business understand what are they actually trying to achieve, as opposed to what they normally say they want to achieve. What are the business benefits of achieving those outcomes? What is the financial value of those benefits? And then what are the major change activities required, not only on the project but in the business as well. Often one of the reasons why benefits aren't delivered and strategies aren't realized is because the business activities required were never identified and therefore never actioned. And you can also produce a delivery roadmap which says this is the sequence in which the outcomes will be delivered, which ensures that you know what is going to be delivered when, what benefits are going to be delivered when, and many sponsors carry these roadmaps around in their pockets to say this is what we're delivering. This is our outcomes delivery roadmap. This is the sequence in which things are going to happen. So the value equation helps you or enables you to help the business actually define what they really want. And I've just spent the last 3 days running a course on value equation where we're actually been training a whole range of people, and the revelations that they went through in that training as to what they thought they came in expecting to define and what they actually defined were quite amazing. So this is a place to start, and when you start with the value equation, you can then move on to things like your project prioritization process to help the business optimize the investment portfolio. Knowing the value of each project is obviously a critical part of project prioritization, together with the strategic relevance and whether or not you're capable of delivering that type of project, which is a massive topic which we could talk about all day. Also, in terms of project governance, what the value equation does is actually give the measures of success for the project governance team. This is what you are accountable for delivering. Obviously, it leads into benefits management. Still, or only around 30% of organisations even try to measure the benefits that come from their project investments. One of the reasons is because they never really identified those benefits up front. Obviously, it goes into the business case. If you think of most business cases, and you like to think of your own, does it have a section called the cost-benefit analysis? Cost first, benefit second. We do projects to get benefits. It should be benefits first, and then we work out the costs of delivering those benefits. A different perspective on the business case that can dramatically increase the value. And you heard at the beginning how some projects we've worked in, and these are not exceptional or outlying examples, where we've taken projects from naught in terms of benefits, like the project team could not find any, and found 40 million using this process. And finally, obviously, change planning and project implementation, because you now know all the activities required to deliver the strategy and value. So starting with the value equation focuses everyone on the value. It starts to shift the perspective from cost to value, from what is it going to cost us to deliver to what are we really trying to achieve. Now some of you may think, oh, we've got all this nailed, thank you very much. With that, if that's the case, that's fantastic. It means you're in the top 5% of organisations in the world. So this is one key aspect to get right. If you get the value equation right, you start to get the value, the business result from your strategy. You can help the organisation think through its strategy as you go forward. Now, the two models I've used in talking to you tonight, we have a book for each, the top 4 value delivery lenses and the top IT value pyramid. And Bob Phelan from Top is with you this evening. I can't see you from where I'm doing this presentation at the moment. But if you give your business card to Bob, he can make sure you get a copy of these 2 books, which goes into more detail and delivers more value in terms of the nature and the contents of each of the 4 lenses and the nature and contents of each aspect of the value pyramid, which will help move your mindset into the required perspective to become a strategic CIO and adopt strategic accountability. In summary, the lack of business leadership is leading to poor project and strategy delivery. It's not IT's fault, it's not the project people's fault, it is the fact that business has abdicated because they don't know what to do. 2 key words from tonight, strategy and value. The 2 key actions is, well, follow up with Bob to get a copy of these books. And I thank you for your attention. It really is that simple. You can get the strategy delivered, you can get the value. You just need to get the business equipped to play their role effectively. Thank you very much.
How can we, this gentleman's asking, how can he get his team to strategically, look to the future and think about
more business that are very engaged with us in IT?
That's right.
But it's looking at strategy. How do you make that leap to?
How do you make the leap to get his team to think strategically versus being within, focusing within the project and the task, thinking about the business case?
I think you need to obviously work with the business, but also you can have, take them away on a away day and talk about the business that you're in. What drives the business? What drives profitability? What's the difference between a good, whatever industry you're in, and an excellent one? And have a day's or half-day session talking about those sort of topics to shift them out of just the project mindset to actually understanding the business. One article I haven't written, but I've got the notes for, was sort of saying, well, some of the things you need to understand. What are the things you need to understand about your business? Who are your major competitors? Do they understand that? What's your competitive advantage as a business? These are the sorts of things you can get them to discuss, and maybe have some people from the business as part of that to have that discussion to get them to thinking more business and understanding the business. I firmly believe personally that you cannot develop systems for an organization you don't understand.
Are we back?
Yes.
Okay. The question was, after billions and billions of dollars have been wasted, why did it take so long to identify this problem and start to identify, solutions?
Well, I think we've been fooled by the fact that project management was the answer. Project and program management, and later project-driven portfolio management. So the project fraternity has been saying, we're the answer, just give it to us, we'll deliver the results. And the whole, as I mentioned in that research we conducted, even the business has taken the on time, on budget as their measure of success. So the mindsets are all focused around the wrong thing. And business has just accepted, if we don't get the results out of a project, it must have been a poor project manager. I mean, how many of you have ever seen a sponsor fired for a project failure? I've seen one, where he misled the executive team and board, and that's the primary reason why he was fired. So I think we're not measuring the right things, and in our research into what drives the waste on projects, which is a combination of both costs going up and value going down, we've identified there are 22 principal drivers of waste. 22. Most organizations measure 5. Good organizations measure 7. But the other 15 or so are just not even visible. And so one of the key things, if we're going to improve performance, is actually to make some of these other aspects of the 22 and the top organizations actually make visible and measure all 22, which is why they can deliver extraordinary results at much less cost. And we've just been using the wrong measures, and a lot of business people have the wrong mindset. I had one CEO of a multi-billion organization the other day say, well, surely if we deliver the project, the benefits come automatically. You go, no, you might get 20% of them, but the other 80% you've actually got to do something about to achieve them, and starting off with actually identifying them.
Hi, I'm Galina, and I just have a quick question for you. Agile. Since Agile taking over the world and we're losing patience and we need everything quick, right? And fast track, what major changes to your processes or to your philosophy because of Agile, or if there have been any? That's my question.
Yeah. Agile is a great delivery vehicle, where I get worried is when Agile is used to define requirements, because the way the brain works here is that Agile definition of requirements can take you down a path very quickly, and once you start going down that path, it's very difficult to actually question, is this actually the way we want to be going? So I think you need to define, what are we trying to achieve, what are the, how we actually want to work, and then Agile is an excellent method of actual getting it in as fast as possible. And in our change management side, that's always been Agile. We just didn't name it that. Constant, repetitive, cumulative change to get the results, rather than the whole big bang. The whole big bang type transformation is something to be avoided, and Agile obviously does that. But what worries me is that when Agile is used for requirements, I think about if someone said to you, what should we do this weekend? All options are open. If they say, should we go to the football this weekend? It's a totally different question for you to answer. And what happens with agile requirements is people say, should we go to the football this weekend? And so the whole discussion becomes about do I or don't I want to go to football, rather than what do I actually want to do this weekend, which is a very much broader question. So agile is great for delivery, and no problem, and hasn't changed anything. It just worries me when it's used for defining requirements. We've added speed instead of specificity. We need to get the business to really define what they really want, and this is the key thing with things like the value equation, is it helps them actually go from I want to lose weight to actually I want to be healthy, to look up, to enjoy my grandkids. That's what they really want. Once you know that, you then have a much clearer idea of what needs to be done to achieve their true outcomes. But if you're just trying to lose weight, then you're going to miss some vital aspects, and again the result will be a poor value to the organization.
Any other questions?
Very good. So, I think that the biggest problem is what I'm hearing, and you touched on this, is that the business unit, the executives, the decision makers, the business owners look at IT as a black box. So IT is now a separate unit, all to its own. It's got a life all to its own. It's like a living organism. It just kind of grows. And the company, like you said, it's mismanaged. It can bring a company to its feet. So what Top does, it seems like it takes away that black box of IT to the business side of the company. Because I'm going to be on both sides, from the technical perspective and from the business perspective. Business folks look at IT as a black box because they don't understand it for the most part. And what you're doing is you're marrying those two units together to come up with a positive, a business-driven outcome. Is that me, Brett?
That's correct. I'm sure all of you know some real value you could bring to your organization if only sometimes a business would listen. You need to establish, referring to the IT value pyramid, you need to establish the credibility to deliver the basic services. Because if the network is always going down, then you have no credibility in the business as CIOs. But assuming that you've got that initial service delivery aspect nailed and that's operating and it's stable, then you need to be talking to the business and helping them define the value. And it's part of you started as a conversation. You don't have to educate them as to what IT is and all that sort of thing. They don't want to know. They want to know, how does this help me deliver value to my customers? And it's a matter of talking that language and getting involved in those discussions, often one-on-one in some cases initially, just to get the credibility with people so they start inviting you to the critical meetings. And if they have away days, ask to come along and listen.
Well, just like you said, if you get off on the wrong foot, you go on the wrong trail, it doesn't matter what your methodology, your procedure is, you're going to get a negative outcome. So you have to have the right strategy at the very end. That is the most critical point of all of this. So to do that, you've got to have the IT folks and the business people together.
Yeah, I mean, we now live in the age where no size business can operate without technology. The opportunities are coming fast and furious, and where IT has to play a role is also in terms of framing those opportunities. Big data is a big thing in the media. Does it really fit our organization? Does it actually contribute to our strategy? Or is cloud a far more relevant technological thing that will help our organization achieve its strategy and its outcomes? So part of the role is framing that such that, and then getting the business involved in the process of actually delivering the strategic outcomes.
question from California. We are a wide-ranging organization.
That's good.
How big does a company need to be to benefit from this methodology?
I think our rule of thumb is 50 to 100 million in turnover, but it's not actually driven by turnover per se, but just it's not for a small 1-2 man band. No, that's not suited. It's once you are relying on information to drive your business rather than knowledge. So any business over 100 million would certainly be in that category. And that's when you need processes to drive your strategy through to results. You can't rely on individual heroes. So in a very small company, people become the heroes and make things happen. But as you grow as a business, when I joined what is now Accenture, but in my day was Arthur Andersen's many years ago, I was employee number 32 in Australia. Then you knew everybody, and that's how you operated. When I left, we had hundreds, and by then we were running on processes. So as soon as your organization is running on processes, relies on information, then TOP becomes a tool that can be extremely valuable to deliver projects or any form of change that's required. We've used it to define the operating models of organizations by again defining what are you trying to achieve and what are all the activities and processes you require to actually achieve those business outcomes.
Just to jump in the U.S., I've used it in companies $20 million to align the business strategy with all their key business initiatives, all the way to Fortune 30 finance organizations. So it's really a tool set, picking the right tools for the problem, and not trying to overburden anyone, but picking the right tool.
And people pick and choose. And the value equation is probably the hub, but different organisations use different tools because that fits where they have deficiencies or needs, and that's or where management is prioritising.
Any other questions? Very good. Well, thank you so much. I think that wraps up our Q&A.
And thank you again for making the time to come out tonight, and I hope you got something useful from this presentation.
Thank you very much.